Hey folks, welcome back and thank you for joining us. Welcome to Retirement Roadmap with MasterPlan Retirement Consultants. My name is Evan. With me, as always, retirement planner Mark Fricks. While we believe everyone should take some time now and then to dream about their eventual retirement, it's important to bear in mind that how you envision your ideal retirement is likely to change as you grow older. Your needs, your tastes, your financial circumstances will change over the course of a retirement. But no matter how these circumstances change, you'll likely still have about 4 clear stages or chapters of retirement. There's a recent Kiplinger magazine article entitled The 4 Phases of Retirement, which really sparked this topic for today. We're going to refer to them as chapters today. Chapter 1, Mark, and that would be the pre-retirement years. Begins about a decade before retirement.
Yeah, you want to start looking at, probably the kids are on their way out the door, finishing up college perhaps. Some finances are changing a little bit from that standpoint. Maybe they've gotten married and flown the coop or whatever it may be. So a lot of your big expenses hopefully have gotten out of the way or close to it. And so you want to start now thinking about what is that next big phase, and of course this, the last third of your life, retirement. But like you said, 4 chapters. That first chapter is really important because we can get some of our best saving and growth during that decade. So let's say you want to retire at 62 to 64, so your early 50s really need to be looking at, am I maxing out my savings, my 401k? Are we getting our bills paid down, getting debt taken care of? That can be very important. Realigning, maybe reassessing where we might end up. Are we going to move? We're going to downsize, start thinking about that, maybe not doing it yet, but thinking about that kind of thing as well. So it can be a very critical time to really get that growth factor kicked in and maybe even begin lining up some of your assets to better reflect the approaching retirement.
Yeah.
It's not all about growth at this point. It's beginning to transition just a little bit into, we still got to have some good growth. We still got to throw some money in, but we also maybe need to develop some different types of accounts. Also a great time to start thinking about taxes in retirement. Begin transitioning maybe more to Roth type holdings and other efficient buckets for taxes as well. So there's a lot of things going on here, and really, this is the time you need to start thinking about working with somebody that really specializes in retirement. It's one thing you've been working with somebody at one of these street side financial planning firms. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean in the strip shopping center or whatever. And they're fine for trying to grow money. But now you start thinking about, where's my income coming from? What's my Social Security going to look like? Do I have a pension or not? And how am I going to take it? Again, this is not enough time to make final decisions, but at least begin thinking about that. And if you're married and have a spouse, start talking about this. There's so many times folks come to our office in their early to mid 50s, they've not ever had a discussion about what their retirement looks like. And they kind of look at each other going, I didn't know you wanted to do that, or whatever it may be. So again, that's kind of where somebody like we can step in and conduct that conversation and bring up some points that maybe you haven't thought of yet.
I didn't think that you read my notes before this, but I think you hit every one of my points.
I did not read them.
No, but this is, for most people, this is probably in their early 50s, the beginning of this decade before retirement. So planning is vital. The first thoughtful approach is, what are your retirement goals? What kind of lifestyle do you want? And as you said, what changes needed? Are you going to consider downsizing a home? Are you going to move to the mountains? Eliminating debt before retirement is a huge one. Paying off the car, that kind of stuff. If you're married, making sure that your goals are aligned with your spouse as well is a huge one that's actually not often considered. Not out of spite or anything, but a lot of times we don't realize that we have different goals than each other.
What's the first time you've really probably talked about that? I mean, all the goals over all these years have been, hey, we want the kids to go to college, we want to live in this community. But now it's just a total different way of thinking, and it's just the two of you again, or getting close to the two of you again, right? And so it's stuff that's not been discussed before, probably. Some couples are better at it than others, but it's still not something that that comes up a lot. And again, the early meetings we have with our clients is a lot about the feelings they have about retirement, the feelings they have about money, the fears. Maybe I didn't realize my spouse had a fear about whatever it may be, right? And so not only just goals and dreams, but those fears and what can we do to get rid of those fears? What kind of a strategy can we put together? And that's why we call it a retirement roadmap, because it's just like, do you want to drive, from Georgia to California with no map, no plan, not enough gas in your car and all that, or do you want to have a plan to get there? That's one of the first stories we used to tell when we founded this firm, was the road trip to California, and my book is kind of based on that. So it's about having that well thought out plan.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the money that you've been saving for years may not be enough for your full retirement. Your strategy's also got to include a thoughtful plan for reliable retirement income. Kiplinger actually cites a survey that found 1/3 of Americans indicate they have no concept of how much money they'll need saved to get them the best odds for achieving their ideal retirement.
And I love it too when somebody comes in and says, I read an article that says you need $1 million to retire. I'm like,
what does that mean? In which bubble that you've created? Who knows?
Yeah, are you living in an RV? Are you living in a mansion? Are you living in California? I mean, there's so many things that we call that, as you know, investor pornography. It's just stuff thrown out there that to get people to read a magazine or something online that really has no meaning. So we want to look at somebody's situation as soon as possible. I mean, we've got now kids of parents that we work with in their 30s come to see us because they saw the importance that their parents put into planning this segment of our lives, and it just makes it that much better. It really does.
I mean, this is just the ideal time, chapter 1, to create that holistic retirement plan, start getting the pieces together, start maturing those accounts that maybe are for income or whatever in the future, mid-50s or so, great time to start getting those prepped and seasoned for that time in your life. So chapter 2, early years of retirement. Typically, this is the most expensive time. You're more active.
Yeah, you get that bucket list. So those years you've been talking about what you're going to do, now you want to do them all, right? And then you want to do it while you can enjoy it. You're active. You're hopefully in good health. If you're in your early to mid 60s, that's a time when you still feel good. Typically, you have the energy. You want to go to the European trip. You want to go to Hawaii. You want to whatever it is you want to do. And so if you're transitioning, but it's also a very interesting time emotionally. Yeah, it really is. The next book I want to write whenever I have time, which may be 30 years from now, I don't know. But it is about that transition because we've seen these clients transition. And so they're scared and excited at the same time. They really are. Now, having a plan takes a lot of that stress off, but you still, you're walking away from a paycheck. Perhaps you've never done that before. And so how do you replace it? And what are you going to do with your time? If you become, kind of lazy and just kind of sleep late and stay up late, you can have health issues. And so how do you keep that going as well? Where do you find purpose? Where do you find meaning? Yeah. And that's vital to our spiritual sides. And so it is a very interesting time, and we have a lot of discussions with our clients about it. It's also a time when you're trying to get used to how that money's going to work. What's coming from where, which we've already designed that plan for our client, but it's still it's just a little muddy. And of course, not really knowing how much we really need. We've talked about it for years with these clients, but you don't really know what you need until you need it.
Well, that's kind of what we tell our clients when we're creating that income plan at the very beginning is, we're going to this is a flexible document. Right. This plan is flexible. It has to be. We don't know what's going to happen in life, but also when you first turn on retirement, you don't really know what you need every month. Maybe you need a little bit more. Maybe you have too much. You know what? Let's leave some of that money where it is and let it grow longer. I don't need it right now.
Let's cut that nozzle off a little while. But also, as we've talked about in other shows, we do divide money up based on the purpose. And so this might be income, this might be growth. And so we may be spending more of our growth money earlier on to travel or to get that beach house or lake house, whatever it might be, while we can, again, still enjoy it. And so there may be some tinkering with what's coming from where. And then you get, again, the tax situation. What are the taxes going to be? If we're digging a lot of money out of the IRA or 401k, we may be getting up into brackets we're not comfortable with. And so there's got to be some strategies to go along with that. But it is a very very interesting time to stand back. And I know I kind of interview our clients when they go through this transition just to learn more about it. And I've got one client, he said he just misses his he calls them his comrades from work, working as a team, and accomplishing things together with a goal in mind. Where do you find that?
Well, I think that's a great point, too. Part-time work is not a bad idea. Financially, of course, it can help as you try to wade into retirement. What's my finances feel like? How does income feel right now? What do I need?
Maybe delay Social Security with a little bit of part-time income.
Yeah, but also exactly for what you say, I think emotionally and psychologically, for just your day-to-day, it can be helpful to have something, and especially if it's something that you've always been interested in. It's not necessarily work just for work's sake, but you're pursuing an interest or something you're passionate about, and that's filling some part-time.
Yep. Yeah, again, and maybe it could be anything. Maybe you've always enjoyed fishing. Now you start tying your own flies, for fly fishing, and turn it into a business. Or maybe there's so many things out there. Or maybe it's just, again, staying out, getting out of the house and staying busy.
Getting out and engaging with the world.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly. Absolutely.
Also, this is a good time to consider your living arrangements. So around 40% of retirees move after they retire. So again, we mentioned a little bit earlier about thinking about that early on, but do you want to downsize, move closer to family? This is a time to consider some of those questions.
Yeah, that's the dangerous part, though. You move closer to the kids and grandkids, and then they get transferred.
Yeah.
And you're left out in Wyoming or something.
Yeah.
Like
well,
that,
I mean, I don't want to spend too much more time on this chapter, but that's also, we see more and more, this is a really busy time for most of our clients' lives. If they're grandparents, close to family, watching the kids, also just filling up their time with interests. Sometimes they seem like they have a busier schedule than I do.
Yeah, they wonder, how did I have time to work?
Yeah, exactly.
And I've had so many people tell me that too, which is a great thing, by the way, staying busy and getting out there and whatever it is you're filling your time with. But that's got to be a balance as well.
Yeah.
And so you got to find that, and it takes sometimes a little bit of time to figure out what that balance is. And am I babysitting my grandchildren so much that I've become their parents or whatever. So you can transition kind of back and forth through that as well.
Yeah. I do want to take a moment, folks, and point you out to our website, MasterPlanRetire.com. There you can find more episodes like the one we're doing today. You can find multiple retirement resources, but perhaps the best point of our website is the Schedule Now button, where you can schedule your complimentary consultation with an advisor to discuss your own retirement hopes, dreams, fears. What does your retirement roadmap look like? We can run a series of reports for you, get you organized, give yourself a 10,000-foot view of how your retirement outlook is and how we can find the places of strengths, the places of weaknesses, the improvements, and just an opportunity completely complimentary to have that series of reports ran. That's MasterPlanRetire.com, or call us at the office 770-980-9262. Chapter 3. A decade into retirement. Now, this is often the least expensive retirement chapter. About a decade into your retirement, because you're likely traveling less, spending more of your time closer to home, things like that.
Yeah, so this is your, mid-70-ish time, I guess, give or take, right? You've done your bucket list. You're getting kind of to the age you don't really want to fly overseas. And again, this is very generalization here, by the way. Everybody's different. But it is, based on studies, kind of a time when we do spend less money because we're doing less things. Maybe the grandchildren are now teenagers or getting older, so it's not like you're babysitting them. Your trips are more about to the grocery store as opposed to, driving across the nation to see something different or whatever. I know my mom and dad became full-time RVers. But as they got in their 70s and even 80s, they got to where they quit traveling around and just parked it somewhere. They just didn't feel comfortable driving that big RV all over the place. So it's just a transition into slowing down a little bit. Maybe that part-time job, you're done with it. You've kind of figured out what retirement's like and how you stay busy. Maybe you're volunteering or whatever. and hopefully enjoying each other if you're married more as well, or your friends. That's I think some of the best things about retirement is the ability to have more time to spend with family, friends, develop those relationships that hopefully continue throughout the rest of your life.
Yeah, and in comparison to the other chapters, this is often the least expensive because of the reasons you said we're less active. However, our healthcare costs begin to rise during this stage, begin requiring more medical appointments, treatments, medications, everything like that. Many people in the third chapter of their retirement also begin taking on expenses like health or safety upgrades to their homes.
That's true. Whether it be wheelchair accessibility, whether it be just the zero entrance shower, things like that. So many homes are not being built that way, and so maybe there's some expense there. Again, I've been blessed with my parents. Have been very, very healthy and have not had to deal with a lot of that. But that's more the unusual than the norm. And we do slow down a little bit on costs, but like you said, we start rising a little bit more as we get into the 70s and 80s, especially into the 80s, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. But just a different kind of, I can't, we get a lot of phone calls from our clients, and probably 2 or 3 a week. My spouse is in the hospital. We're looking at maybe memory care, things like that. So that's beginning to creep in a little bit as well, which can increase, again, the cost of things.
Yeah. If you're one of our clients, your estate planning and legacy planning is already in place at this point in your life, but this is for most people, this is a time where you really start to hunker down on your estate and legacy planning. Make sure that you know what legacy you want to leave behind for those who matter most to you. Updating the documents, it's very likely that births, deaths, marriages, divorces, other developments will have changed over the course of your retirement, 2 decades at this point possibly, as well as your needs, your loved ones' needs may have changed. So making sure those documents are up to date, consistently checking in on those as well, whether it's trustees or powers of attorney, things like that.
Yeah, as you know, probably every 2 or 3 years when a client comes in for their annual review, we'll look back at their documents, we'll do a beneficiary audit. We want to make sure that some of the laws haven't changed. I know here in Georgia, we had some major changes to financial power of attorneys and how they're written, and also the healthcare directives. So people with those documents that were before that time period, 2018, 2017, they may not work very well. And so we want to make sure those are updated. And that's something probably people don't really think about if they're not working with someone. They just think, well, I got my will done 20 years ago, we're good. Yeah, but you moved to Florida.
Yeah.
If you moved to Florida, your will is probably not going to be much good anymore. So it's not only aging and changes in laws, but also changes in where you may live.
Yeah, and we just believe you shouldn't wait until your health begins to slip before working on something as essential as your legacy plan.
Yeah.
So Chapter 4, and these are the later years. It's possible that healthcare will be your biggest expense at this point.
Okay.
So that Kiplinger article cites a fidelity study that determined the average 65-year-old couple should expect to spend about $300,000 on healthcare during their retirement, and often many of those expenses will occur in these later years.
That's right. And healthcare, actually, the inflation of healthcare is higher than normal inflation. It seems to average between 5 and 6%. And so all of these things are going up. Your Medicare Part B, your supplements, things like that, your out-of-pocket. Again, we watch clients as well as family that have aged in their 80s and so, and it's just like every week there's another doctor visit, another complication may arise. Even the most blessed folks, will have issues going on. The good thing is technology has gotten so great that you can have things done and be back on your feet pretty quickly. I think I've got a client that's getting ready to have a hip replacement, and they're going like through the front, and she said she was only taking 2 weeks off work. I mean, that's just amazing to me.
Yeah.
So that's certainly, but with increased technology comes increased cost.
Yeah.
And so everything's getting more expensive medicine-wise as well. So you've got both sides of that coin, and quality of life is better. We're living longer, which means we're going to spend more money.
Well, yeah, our healthcare, of course, expenses are going to go up depending on our health, our needs, and everything else like that. However, we're also adding in new healthcare costs, potentially expenses for nursing homes, assisted living, home care services, anything like that.
Just a sitter coming in.
Of course. And so it's vital that by this time you've got a long-term care strategy in place. If you're waiting till this point to start working on a plan, it's likely too late. With the how expensive long-term care insurance is, and we've expressed before, we're not huge proponents for long-term care for multiple reasons, but long-term care insurance, excuse me, for multiple reasons, but that does not negate the fact that you desperately need a plan in place, because at this point you're not going back to work. You are basically at the mercy of how diligent you were the previous decades, and how well you planned and stuck to it.
And what kind of a strategy you developed, as we've talked about before on the show, is there are other tools that you can use to help cover long-term care that aren't the traditional long-term care insurance, where you pay and pay and pay and pay, and if you don't use it, you lose it, and that kind of thing. So we love the new tools where if you don't use it, you still get the money, or the kids get the money, or whatever, and just some better strategies. We also have some of those income producing products that will double your income if you have a long-term care need. And there's no approval needed on those. It's just a 2-year waiting period. So if you don't use that money for 2 years, you're good. It can double your income for long-term care needs, and that can be huge.
Yeah. Estate planning strategies are coming together at this point. They need to be completed. At this point, you're relying likely on a lot of other people, maybe children or a close family. So making sure your trustees, powers of attorney, those kind of folks understand their role, feel equipped for the role, and things like that. The work and planning from the previous chapters and before are basically vital that they were put into place for this time in your life.
Yeah, it's just important to understand when you look at all 4 of these chapters that life is not linear.
Yeah.
It's all over the place, but we do kind of have an upside down bell curve when it comes to money, which we've just talked about. Your 60s, you're spending probably a good bit more than you normally would. You slow down your 70s, you're spending less, and then because of health, spending more in the end. So that's why having a comprehensive retirement roadmap that ties these in and follows you through these years, it's changeable, it's updatable, it can adapt to what you need, to what laws say, or whatever it may be. But it's, again, you're looking 40 years down the road. It's great to have that plan that can also just kind of flow with life.
Absolutely. And we have people, don't think that your situation is too complicated or too different
or too late,
unusual, or too late even. We have folks at so many different stages of life, so many different backgrounds, so many different situations. And we can make a plan for you. And even if you feel like you got started too late, that it's never too late to start to plan. So I would absolutely recommend go to our website, MasterPlanRetired.com. There you can click on the Schedule Now button, find a time on our calendar that works best for you to talk to one of our advisors, discuss your own retirement. Again, what keeps you up at night? What are you worried about? I think the biggest thing that we can provide with a retirement plan is peace of mind. A lot of people put off retirement planning because it's scary to think about. It's scary to look at. It's one of those avoid it so I don't have to think about it sort of situations. But the sooner you get started, the better. And again, you don't know how to get started until you have the information. So let us help you get organized. Let us run some reports, find your strengths and weaknesses. And again, that's completely complimentary. So again, go to MasterPlanRetired.com or call us at the office, 770-980-9262.
And I'll never forget the guy, and I'm not going to say his name, he's a client, but went to a class of ours. And then I did not hear from him for like 2 years, and he called me up and said, I'd like to meet. And I said, great, what are you thinking? He says, well, I'm retiring tomorrow. So I might need a plan. We've had people retired 10, 15 years that have come to us. So it's never too early, never too late, but the earlier the better for sure.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Well, we're out of time. We're so glad you joined us. And until we see each other again, remember, plan well and prosper. Take care.